So everyone who knows me knows that my favorite movie is The Matrix. Thank you. Someone who does know me is The Matrix. Absolutely love that movie. One of my favorite of all time. Unfortunately, we all know that the rest of the movies of The Matrix didn't pan out so well. It just kind of went downhill as each movie was made. But in the second movie, there's a point that's really interesting because what happens is you have this guy, Neo, who has like all these powers he's discovered, but he's trying to figure out what the purpose of those powers are, or what the purpose of those powers is. And so as he goes through, he finds out what the purpose of those powers is, and it's disappointing, to say the least. Now, Neo has a mentor named Morpheus, and Morpheus knew that he would find the one, and once he found the one, that it would change the entire scope and hope of humanity. That the one that he would find would be the one that would deliver, the people from the machines, kind of thing. And then they find out that Neo's purpose actually isn't what they thought it would be. And all of a sudden, what happens is Morpheus finds himself in a position where he's in this crisis of almost like a crisis of faith, trying to figure out, like, I had this hope and now it's not going to happen. I had this dream and now it's not going to happen. And then there's this one point where in Matrix Reloaded where they have this ship that they've been using. It's called the Nebuchadnezzar. So they're on this ship and they find out that a bomb is being launched toward the ship, and so they have to evacuate the ship. So they leave the ship, a bomb comes, hits the ship, and the ship explodes. And the Morpheus makes a statement, and that statement is going to be what inspires our message today. And that statement is simply this. You can see it right on your screen. I have dreamed a dream, but now that dream is gone from me. I have dreamed a dream, but now that dream has gone from me. We're in the middle of a series called Living the Dream. And what we're hoping through this series is for us to be able to recognize, because, for example, last series we did was on lamenting and bringing our challenges and our problems and our circumstances to God. And what I decided to do was to kind of follow up that series with this series where we actually look at a practical example of a guy who goes through some stuff and has to figure out, how do I navigate these difficulties? So it's a great way for us to be able to look at it. But last week we talked about this guy named Joseph and that God had given Joseph a dream. And really what I wanted you to walk away with last week is the fact that God has a dream for you. No matter what your background may be, no matter how difficult life may have been, no matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how much you've faltered in your life, even if you feel like you were unqualified, God still qualifies you, and that God has a dream for you. So if you missed that last week, please go back and watch it. You can go to our website, and you can watch the live stream replay there. But what I wanted to do today is I wanted to dig a little bit more into Joseph and who he is. But what I also wanted to do is I wanted to show two contrasting responses real quickly to a dream that's lost. So the first response is going to be from a guy named Peter. Now, Jesus takes Peter and the disciples to this place called Caesarea Philippi. And Caesarea Philippi is kind of like the Vegas of its time. So whatever happens in Caesarea Philippi stays in Caesarea Philippi. So that's kind of the place it was. So Jesus takes the disciples there, and he begins to have a conversation with them. And the conversation he asks them is this. He says, well, who do people say that I am? And so they begin to give answers. And so then he says, well, who do you say I am? And then one of his disciples, Peter, says this in Matthew chapter 16, verse 16. He says, Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And it says, and then after he makes this declaration, which is really powerful, what Jesus does is Jesus begins to reveal to Peter his actual dream for Peter and his dream for the church in the future. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 18 through 19, it says, now I say to you, this is Jesus speaking to Peter, now I say to you that you are Peter. So this is the first time he's actually referred to as Peter. Before he was referred to as Simon, that was his name. You are Peter, which means rock. And upon this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. and I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. So Jesus shares this vision, this dream that he has for Peter. And so just imagine, like, whoa, he's calling me rock. Because if you read the life of Peter, he is anything but a rock. But obviously, Jesus sees something in Peter that maybe even Peter doesn't see in himself. And so he calls him that, this rock and this foundation and building the church, and Peter's going to be a part of that. So there's this dream, this kind of birth. And maybe Peter doesn't completely understand exactly what the dream might be and what the results might be, but he knows that there's a part of it, and he knows that Jesus has a vision for him. And so as a result of that, there's this swagger he gets, this, shall I say, confidence that he gets. And his walk kind of, changes because he has that confidence, that confident walk. And I don't know what that is. This is like I broke my leg. But you understand what we're talking about. So then there's this point in the future where Jesus is having another conversation with the disciples, and he's beginning to prepare them for what's about to happen. And he's saying, look, I'm about to be betrayed, and I'm about to be arrested, and when that happens, you guys are going to desert me. And Peter says this in Matthew chapter 26, verse 33. Peter declared, even if everyone else deserts you, I, because he's got that swagger, will never desert you. Why? It's because he got the confidence. I've got the dream. And God, Jesus, we in this. I will never desert you. Side by side, we're walking through this. And then he goes on in Matthew chapter 26, verse 35. Peter, because Jesus says to Peter, like, hey, you are going to actually deny me 3 times. You're going to deny knowing me 3 times. And Peter says this in Matthew chapter 26, verse 35. No, Peter insisted, even if I have to die with you, I will never deny you. And all the other disciples vowed the same. So he's saying, even Jesus, I would die for you. That was a really bad Prince reference there. Sorry, wife. She's probably watching it going, what are you doing? But so Peter has this swagger. Peter has this confidence like, Jesus, we are about to accomplish something. Something's about to happen. And I am with you. I am with you. And then, so they find themselves now, they're in the garden. And so the temple guards come to arrest Jesus, and Peter's like, this is my moment. He pulls his sword. They can take our land, but you will not take our Jesus, kind of thing. And he swings the sword, he cuts the guy's ears off, and Jesus is like, whoa, wait. I'm not waging that kind of battle there, buddy. Put your sword away. And then, here's your ear back. Puts the guy's ear back on his head. Here's your ear back. And Peter's like, I thought this was our moment. But Jesus is walking away, arrested. So he kind of follows along. And he's standing outside and kind of seeing the process that's happening and seeing Jesus falsely accused and him not doing anything about it. And he had seen, like, Jesus in situations before where the crowds would try to grab Jesus, but it wasn't Jesus' time. And so Jesus would kind of do like the Ethan Hunt, kind of escape kind of thing. But in this situation, it doesn't happen. And it seems like it's getting worse. I had a dream, but now that dream is gone from me. And so when Peter's asked about his relationship with Jesus, he says this in Matthew chapter 26, verses 74 and 75. He says, Peter swore a curse on me if I'm like, may I die. That's what he's saying. May I die. I don't know the man. No, I don't know Jesus. Like, he's even become that point. He is relegated to, I don't know the man. I don't know him. And immediately the rooster crowed. Suddenly, Jesus' words flashed through Peter's mind. Before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me. And he went away weeping bitterly. So here's a guy, because I think sometimes we're a little bit too hard on Peter. And I think we think, sometimes that, like, Peter should have stepped. He should have. How do you react when you have a dream and now that dream is gone from you? How do you react? And all of a sudden, Peter now seems very human to me, because I could have easily have done what Peter did when my dream is gone from me and I'm also afraid for my life. I could have easily have done what Peter did. And as a result of that, he regretted, ultimately, the way that he responded when his dream was lost. And so now we come to the guy that is the inspiration for this series, Joseph. And we're going to see Joseph when his dream is lost, because that really is the challenge that we have here. Because here's the question, and you can see this question on the screen, that I think is important for us to ask, and that is, what do we do? What do we do when we dream a dream and it seems like that dream leaves us? What do we do when we dream a dream and it seems like that dream leaves us? How do we navigate that? And that's where Joseph is going to help us. So here is Joseph's dream, because remember we talked about last week that God had given Joseph a dream, and that we were going to kind of jump into the implications of that dream a little bit more this week. So in Genesis 37, verses 5 through 7, it says, "One night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. 'Listen to this dream,' he said. 'We were out in the field tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles all gathered around and bowed low before mine.'" And so people assume that, because many of us have them, right? You have that bratty little brother or that bratty little sister, and they say something that just kind of like annoys you. And they kind of already get on your nerve anyway. And you know the reason why is because they get away with stuff that you never got away with. That you never got away with. If I would have done what you did, Mom would have beat me. Would have beat me. Matter of fact, here's what Mom would have done. Mom would have made me go out into the yard, pick my own switch, and bring my switch back to her and tell me that ain't big enough. So now, and then she would go outside and pick a branch from an olive tree, to beat me with, kind of thing. Yet, you do the same exact thing, and it's, oh, isn't that cute? Right? So your siblings already get on your nerve, but then to have your sibling basically tells you a dream, that in the dream you're basically saying to your sibling, my dream tells me I'm going to be better than you. I'll be better than you. Now, some people take that as Joseph being a little bit haughty, and he may have been. He may have been. But what if he wasn't? What if he wasn't being haughty? Because here's the other thing, too. Have you ever had relationships with certain people that just irk you? Just irk you. And even if they say something positive and affirming, it still irks you. And they can give you a compliment that someone else will give you the same exact compliment. And you would go to the other person, you go, oh, thank you. To them, you go, shut up. Kind of. So this is still is kind of the relationship that Joseph had with his brothers. And again, it goes on to say this, because he had another dream, right? But here's what his brothers said in response to that dream. In Genesis chapter 37, verse 8, it says, his brothers responded, "So you think you will be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them, the way he talked about the dream. Again, some people take that as being haughty. Other versions translate this as just the fact that he talked about the dream. They just hated him for talking about the dream. And the reality is they hated Joseph so much that it doesn't matter how Joseph approached it to him or said it to him. They were still going to hate him. And here's the reason why. As parents, one of the things that we try to do as parents is to not have a favorite child, right? We do our best not to have a favorite child. But sometimes we slip. Right? Sometimes we do. Sometimes. But we try our best not to have a favorite child. Well, Joseph's dad didn't even hide it. Didn't even hide it. Joseph was his absolute favorite son. Absolute favorite. It says this in Genesis chapter 37, verses 3 and 4. It says, Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other children because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So one day, Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. They couldn't say a kind, stupid, they couldn't say a kind word about Joseph. And it's kind of interesting because when you think about it, the hatred that they had for Joseph is not necessarily Joseph's fault. Now, Joseph possibly could have been bratty now that I think about it, because when you are the favorite, sometimes you do what? Act like the favorite. Because you know, I could do stuff and I won't get in trouble. You know? Oh, or you could do this. Boy, what'd you do? I just touched him. I didn't do anything. Because you know that you can get your brother or your sister in trouble just because, why? You are the favorite. And the problem with having a favorite child is, your kids can kind of see through that, and they begin to see you in a different light, and they begin to see that child in a different light and everything as well. And so this was probably Joseph's situation, that his brothers hated him that much more. So, but then here's the thing, is not only does Joseph have the one dream, he also has another dream. And so it says this in Genesis chapter 37, verses 9 through 10. It says, soon Joseph had another dream. And again, he told his brothers and sisters about it. Sisters. I'm just adding all kinds of things to the passage. I'm excited. Okay, so again, he told his brothers about it. Listen, I have had another dream, he said. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed low before me. This time he told the dream to his father as well as to his brothers. But his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that, he asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow to the ground before you? I think of that, remember that movie, Superman 2? Kneel before Zod. Remember that? Is that just me? Sorry. Okay, so I'll just continue on. Watch Superman 2. Just look at YouTube clips and you'll see what I'm talking about. But his father sees this in such a negative light. And for us, we may not understand why his dream is such an issue. So let me explain something to you. In Hebrew culture, the way that the culture was set up is that the oldest child would receive, the oldest child was seen as almost like the next in line to be able to take over the family. So as a result of that, the oldest child was given extra responsibilities. As a result of that, the oldest child was given extra blessings in such a way because once the father passed away, then what would happen is the oldest son, it's actually the oldest son, so what would happen is the oldest son will receive double an inheritance compared to the other children because that oldest son was also now responsible for taking care of his mom as well as taking care of his family. If he had sisters, he was responsible for that as well as taking over the business for his dad, that kind of thing. So the idea was that the lineage ran through the oldest. Matter of fact, there were even special offerings that they would do on behalf of the oldest son, because there was a fear of, what if my oldest son sinned in such a way that he dies, and now I don't have an older son to carry on my legacy? Like that, so that was kind of like the mindset. This is the way they looked at the oldest son. And so really, here's the mindset, because realize Joseph in the ranking was not number 1 or 2 or 6 or 9. Joseph was 11 in the dream, or in ranking in his family. He was 11. So the idea that he would have a dream where his brothers would kneel before him, and now he has another dream where his father and mother would kneel before him. Now, if Reuben, his oldest brother, would have had that dream, it would have been fine, because he's the oldest. So he's supposed to have kind of dreams like that. But for Joseph, being 11th in line to have that kind of dream, it kind of supersedes like the role of the brother, the older brother, and that kind of thing in the family. So you can also see how having a dream is even more of an insult. Not only to, his dad, but now it's also an insult to his older brothers and also to his oldest brother. And so not only do I hate you because you are my father's favorite, but also I hate you because you have dreams where now I'm supposed to kneel before you and recognize you, although I'm older than you. Right? And come on, we also do that with our younger siblings too, don't we? Mom put me in charge, so you need to listen to me. I ain't listening to you, right? Have we had those kind of conversations in the family? So this is the dynamic that's happening. So this ultimately continues to feed this hatred that they have of Joseph and who Joseph is. And it kind of builds like this animosity. And so one day, the brothers go out and they are having an opportunity to graze the sheep and that kind of thing. And so the father, Jacob, says to Joseph, hey, why don't you go check on your brothers and see how your brothers are doing? And this is what happens. This is the conversation that his brothers have. In Genesis chapter 37, verses 18 through 20, it says, when Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they recognized him in the distance. As he approached, they made plans to kill him. Now that's sibling rivalry. Like when I think of sibling rivalry, I think like locking the door on your brother or sister so they can't get out of the bathroom. Like, those kind of things. But they went straight from like pranks to murder. And then here comes the dreamer, they said. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We could tell our father a wild animal has eaten him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. I don't know about you, but that kind of seems like a little dark. Right? Maybe rough him up a little bit. Dad's not around. Take him behind a tree and kind of beat him up. But like murder him? That just seems a little extreme. But that is the depth of the hatred that they had towards their brother. Now, Reuben, the oldest, gets wind of what they're talking about. And so Reuben talks them out of murder and says, hey, why don't you throw him into this cistern here? Go ahead and do that. But Reuben's plan was, I'm going to come back when my brothers leave. I'm going to rescue Joseph, and I'm going to take Joseph back to dad. That's what Reuben was going to do. And at some point, Reuben walks away. He's not around because the conversation with the other brothers continue. And it says in Genesis chapter 37, verses 26 through 28, Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain by killing our brother? Like, oh, he's coming to his senses. We would have to cover up the crime. True crime stories. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. This is crazy. And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver, and the traders took him to Egypt. Took him to Egypt. Now, I see the line. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. That would be like, hey, don't murder him, and let's not sell him into slavery. Right? You would think that would be a thing. But they take this opportunity. They sell Joseph to these slave traders as they're going by. And just to give you an idea, where they were at, location-wise, it was an area where there would always be people traveling through. It was like a trade route where they were. And so as a result, that's why they were able to see like these traders going through. And they were like, and I want to make this really clear. This is really important. I hope I'm not giving you any ideas on what to do with your brothers and sisters, because that's not the goal of this message, you know. And if you are a younger brother or sister that's here right now, just kind of be on the lookout, you know, kind of thing. But so just imagine that this is what's going on, and also the animosity that the brothers had towards their dad is also revealed. So when they sell Joseph into slavery, then they take Joseph's coat and they dip it in goat's blood. And then they take it back to their dad because, remember, he is Joseph's favorite. Joseph is his favorite, right? So here is the coat of your favorite son, and he is now D-E-D, right? He's dead. Not just D-E-A-D. He's like dead. Like he's dead kind of thing. And so now just imagine just the level of grief that they put Jacob through, and just kind of watched as their father grieved their son. You know, like was he in the back? Did he like bury the coat? I'm curious, like how did Jacob like navigate that kind of loss? And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. And for those of you that may be parents one day, you know, you'll know what we're talking about and everything as well. Sorry, I just kind of pointed you guys out like, what, Ken? What? I just led worship. What are you talking about? But for those of you, the idea of the death of a child is, like, there are certain shows I just can't watch. Like, if it's somebody that's going to lose their child or son or something like that, sometimes certain shows will just hit me too hard, and I just can't. Or I'll give you an example of this too. Last night, I was here with Faith, because Faith cleans the church now as her job. So I was here with Faith, and I was doing something, and Faith had said, "Oh, someone's here. Should I go ahead and continue cleaning?" I was like, "Yeah, go ahead and keep cleaning." So and it hits me like, "Oh, I should go check on Faith." So I walk out through the back, and I don't see Faith. So I'm like, Faith, and she's not responding or anything. So I walk into the office, see she's cleaning there, and then I walked outside. So I'm starting to kind of freak out a little bit. So then I take my phone, and I do the find my phone thing, and I kind of track, where is she? Because has she been kidnapped? I like need to jump in my car and go chase him down kind of thing. And then she's still at the building. So then I go upstairs, and she's like mopping. You know? So just imagine. Or how about this? As a parent, if you've ever been in the store and you're shopping, and you turn around and your child is gone. Yeah, somebody said, who was that? Somebody said, oh, right? You turn around and like there is nothing more freaking than that. Like you just go bonkers crazy. So just imagine that, but now imagine that in Jacob's situation, like my son has died, and trying to figure out how to navigate that. So it goes on to say this in Genesis chapter 37, verse 36. It says, "Meanwhile, the Midianite traders arrived in Egypt, where they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Potiphar was captain of the palace guard." So now put yourself in Joseph's position, that you've been given this dream. And the dream that you dreamed twice is really of you taking on a leadership role in your family's Like, and it's kind of a prophetic dream as well, that you're taking on this leadership role in your family's life, and your family sells you into slavery. See, I want us to understand something, and that is every single one of you, God has a dream for you. He absolutely does. He has a dream for you. There's gifts and talents He has wired into you, and there are ways that you can make an eternal difference. And I said this last week, and I firmly believe this, that I think some of you have the capacity to make a greater difference than even I could as pastor of the church, because of the people that you know and the way that you can begin to impact and make a difference in the lives of others. But here's the thing about a dream. No dream is ever reached without trials. No dream is ever reached without setbacks and obstacles and hardships and impossibilities. And sometimes those impossibilities can come from others. Sometimes they come from others that you trusted greatly. And as a result of a betrayal or something along those lines, it now puts your dream at risk. Sometimes we could put our own dreams at risk, right? The way that we respond to certain situations, sometimes because certain struggles that we have, challenges that we have, habits that we have, sometimes we could put our own dreams at risk. Or the other thing that could put our dreams at risk is life. Sometimes life just happens. It just does. And there are good days and there are what? Bad days. And sometimes the bad days are really bad. Because have you, again, noticed that on a bad day, it seems like something else happens that's bad, and something else happens that's bad, and you're like, what did I do? Like, who did I take off? Kind of thing. Because it just seems like it keeps happening throughout the day, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. But sometimes life just happens, and it puts our dreams at risk as well. There's a really great proverb that I want you to see. In Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16, it says, the godly may trip 7 times, but they will get up again. But one disaster is enough to overthrow the wicked. But I love that. But they will get back up again. So here's what we learn from this passage, and you can see this right on the screen as well. Resilience is a sign of godliness. It's a sign of godliness. Now, let me make this really clear. I'm not saying that if you wrestle, if you have setbacks, if you give up, that it means that you're not godly. I'm not saying that at all, so please don't twist it into that. But what I'm saying is, why is it a sign of godliness? Is because there is a hope that we have that no matter what our circumstances might be, no matter what our situation might be, no matter how difficult that might be, there is a hope that we have that as a result of the work of God in our lives, that no matter how difficult the situation might be, if God has a dream for me, I'm going to hold on, and eventually that dream will come to pass. It'll come to pass. So I'm going to have to make it through this. And so, yeah, you can knock me down, but I'm going to get back up again. You may do that. You may knock me down, but I will get back up, and I will keep persevering, and I will keep pushing, and I will keep fighting, because I believe in what God has for me and that God has a dream for me. So there is that resilience. And also, when you think through the Bible, I mean, think about some of the obstacles that people had to face. We're talking about rivers. We're talking about armies. We're talking about impossible circumstances and situations, walls. We're talking about things that people found themselves having to face and overcome, setbacks, defeats, difficulties that they had to face and overcome. So I want to encourage you that with your dream, don't give up. Even if life knocks you down, you get back up and you keep fighting. If you knock yourself down, know that God forgives you. He will restore you and heal you and renew you so that you can continue to be on the path to pursue the dream that He has for you. So it goes on to say in Genesis chapter 39, verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph. So he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Now, I really want you to lean into this verse because there's something really significant there. It says that the Lord was with Joseph as he was in the house of his master. So literally, here's what it's reminding us of. It's reminding us of this simple fact that God was with Joseph in his slavery. It doesn't say God was with Joseph when he was delivered, or God was with Joseph when he found his freedom, or God was with Joseph when he was victorious, or God was with Joseph when he overcame. It says that God was with Joseph in his slavery. I wonder how many of us miss the presence of God because we're looking for the deliverance of God. How many of us miss the presence of God because we're looking for the deliverance of God? And as a result of that, we find ourselves stuck. We find ourselves stuck. It goes on to say in Genesis chapter 39, verse 3, Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. So this is interesting. So the slave master realizes that God is with Joseph, and as we begin to read through, we begin to see that the slave master begins to trust Joseph and begins to put more and more responsibilities into the hands of Joseph because Joseph in this, because there's a response that Joseph could have had to his slavery. The response could have been, dude, my brother sold me out. They sold me out. And now I'm stuck in this foreign land, serving this guy I don't know, I don't like, you know. There are so many responses. He could have just given up. Because, God, you gave me a dream, and that dream was with my family, and my family sold me out. I'm done. That could have been his response. But there's a confidence that Joseph has, and we're gonna look at the secret of that confidence in a moment, that Joseph has. And as a result of having that confidence, he works hard and he succeeds. So I want to encourage you to do not let your setback be an excuse for laziness. Do not let your setback be an excuse for quitting. Do not let your setback be an excuse for giving up. Sometimes you might have to push a little bit harder. Sometimes you may have to have a standard of excellence in the midst of your setback, in the midst of your suffering. And you know what empowers you to be able to do that is because you know the simple fact that what? God is with me. God is with me. And so I really want to encourage us with this because I think sometimes when we go through difficulties, we have this mindset that God is on the other side of my difficulty. So God is in my deliverance. So if I'm jobless, then God is in the new job. Or if I get a diagnosis, then God is in my healing. Or if my marriage is struggling, then God is in us figuring it out. If I'm single, then God is in giving me that man or giving me that woman. So we always look at the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And we think God must be in the next thing because right now this sucks and I don't think God is in it. Matter of fact, sometimes we even get to the point where we think where we're at right now, God has abandoned us. But Joseph realized that he was with me. So that brings us to this point that you can see on the screen, and that is maybe your blessing is in the now and not the next. Maybe your blessing is in the struggle and not the delivery. Maybe your blessing is in the slavery and not the freedom. Maybe your blessing is in the loss and not the victory. See, that's what Joseph teaches us. So, and again, I'm sure he wasn't like, Lord, you're so good. I'm in slavery. I'm sure that's, you know what I mean? He's probably real, like, this sucks, God. I can't believe I'm in this situation. But since I'm here, I'm going to give you my best. So if you're going through, if you're in a difficult time, be real with God. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Be real with God. But still, you give your all. Because God is with you. And the most growth may happen in that moment in your life. And so here's the thing. If Joseph had felt God had abandoned him, because that's the thing. Sometimes we feel like God abandons us, and then we compromise what really matters. We compromise our principles. We compromise what's important. So there was an opportunity that Joseph had to compromise, an opportunity that no one would have known about if he decided to act on this opportunity. So what happens is Potiphar's wife, his slave master, Potiphar's wife notices Joseph. And when I say notices Joseph, I mean she noticed Joseph. And so she approaches Joseph, and she's like, Joseph, why don't you come visit me in the bedroom? Why don't you come sleep with me? And Joseph is like, no, woman. No, there's no way. And there's this one point where Joseph is actually in the house alone, and she realizes that Joseph is in the house alone, and so she basically tries to jump Joseph's bones. Like she grabs him and like, come on, you can be my man, kind of thing. Like this is her moment. And it says this in Genesis 39:12. She came and grabbed him by his cloak, demanding, come on, sleep with me. And Joseph tore himself away, but left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. Like you want to get away bad when you leave. You're like, and he was gone. keep the coat because you ain't keeping me, right? He was gone. That's his commitment, to honor God with his life. Again, a perfect moment if he felt like God abandoned him to say, to heck with it. God's not interested in me, so why should I obey him? I'm just going to do what I want to do. And here's the thing, too, that when we're in that position and we compromise, you know what happens is not only now are we in a position that sucks, but now we feel like we suck. Because there's nothing worse than to compromise when you're in a terrible situation and now have to look at yourself in the mirror. So your suffering is now compounded by your failure. And God wants you to avoid that. God wants you, when you do come out on the other side of the regret, or to the other side of the challenge, to have no regrets. So again, this gives us a picture. So jumping back in the past a little bit, when she first approaches Joseph to sleep with her, here's what he says in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 and 9. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one has more authority than I do. He's held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. Now notice that, because Joseph could have said again, God's abandoned me. But I'm not. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not. And Joseph could have responded like, my master trusts me with everything. This will be a great sin against my master. Because that would be true, right? It'd be a great sin against Potiphar. He could also even say, it would be a great sin for me to dishonor you. Although she wanted to be dishonored, right? But it would be a great sin for me to dishonor you. It would be a great sin for me to dishonor myself. That could have been something he said, and all of those would have been right. But Joseph has a higher standard. And he says, it would be a great sin against God. Why? Because he knew that God was with him. And he wasn't going to compromise God's presence. And so that's what I want to encourage you with. In the midst of your moments of difficulty, hardship, that maybe to remember that God is with you. And because he's with you, hold on to your standards. Hold on to the principles that you know are important for you to not have compromise in your life. Hold on to that and continue to grow and pursue that relationship with him. Here at Encounter, one of the things that we love to do is at the end of our messages, because the theme of our church is simply this, is that we want to help people to be able to love God, love others, and love themselves. Because really, Christianity is just that simple. Not easy, but it really is just that simple. And so that's the mandate that Jesus gives us. And so what we do is we've made that the core of our church. And so at the end of every message, we end the message with this, something with love up, which is loving God, love out, loving others, and loving in, and loving ourselves. So you could take one of these principles as a result of this message and apply them, or you could take all three of them. It's completely up to you. So in love up, trust that God is with you when it feels and looks like he's not. Trust that God is with you when it feels and looks like he's not. Because usually in difficulty, it feels like he isn't. And it feels like you pray and pray and pray, and it's just not being heard. So trust that he's with you. Love out. Treat people with God's love no matter how bad things are. Don't let your situation be an excuse to be a jerk. Situational jerkiness. Don't practice that. Make a commitment to love others no matter what's happening in your life. Love others. And then, love in. Do not compromise your God-given principles when you feel abandoned. Because you don't want to, at the end of the day, when you come out on the other side, you don't want to come out on the other side hating yourself for what you did. So hold on, no matter how difficult it might be. Father, I thank you. I thank you for the awesomeness of who you are.